Well and safe this morning, and welcome to this week's Facebook Live. And this week we're going to talk about Machiavellianism. I've been promising to write this one for a while because I didn't realize how long in fact it had been since I wrote the last two. So it's all about the Dark Triad. That's rough grouping of personalities that we roughly grouped together. Ginny's joining us this morning. Hi. This is Ginny, by the way. If you haven't met her before, sometimes she joins us. So they're a rough grouping of personalities that we have grouped together because they're very similar, and we call them the Dark Traid. So we're talking about, psychopaths, sociopaths, we're talking about narcissistic personality disorder, and then we have Machiavellianism on the bottom. So roughly. So and it is a very rough grouping. They're similar. They're very similar to one another. So in the blog at the end, I do say to you, if you want to protect yourself against a Machiavellian, then I've gone into a lot of detail on narcissistic personality disorder and on the other two, sociopath and psychopath. I like to differentiate between the two. Some people use it interchangeably. So if you want detailed, how to handle it in court, how to handle it in the workplace, then it's all there. I wasn't going to repeat myself this morning on any of that. Just to say to you that unlike the other personality types, the Machiavellians are actually not included in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5. That manual does change. It changes much more slowly than the other one, but they're not in there at the moment. It is treated as a personality construct. They are assessed. There is an assessment tool. It has been around since about the 70s. So, and we do take them pretty seriously. We take any of them on the Dark Triad very seriously, and you should too. Most people, would be aware of the psychopaths. They get an awful lot of publicity in films. They go to the extreme there, with, the serial killer being the psychopath. But anything on the Dark Triad is lethal and can be lethal. So you have to be aware of that and be willing, to protect yourself. So a little bit of the history of Machiavellianism. It comes from a book, in fact, which was written by, and I'm going to butcher this man's name, Niccolo Machiavelli, and he wrote it in the 16th century. It was titled The Prince, and he wrote it to help princes, rulers. And in it he describes strong rulers, and strong rulers were people, he said, that they did anything and by any means in order to get what they wanted, and this was to justify survival. So you've got to also put that book into context. It's the 16th century, pretty mad time, medieval times still. You've got to understand what was going on. A lot of wars and things were going on at the time, so you've got to understand that the historical context maybe of when the book was written. But anyway, out of that, Machiavellianism was born, or it was placed on this book that it came out of. And Machiavellians, basically, their sole purpose is themselves, their own interests. That's where it lies. They only, they love themselves, just like the other personality types on that Dark Triad. It's all about them, very much all about them, and they will do anything and everything in order to achieve what they want, to get their interests met. So they're going to manipulate, exploit, deceive, lie, etc. to get what they want. These type of people believe that relationships and relying on other people, in fact, is a weakness. And any sort of vulnerability would be seen as a weakness in them. They don't do that. They don't do relationships. It's not to say that they wouldn't go into a relationship if they were able to get their needs met there, and manipulate you and abuse you and use you and then discard you once you were no more further use. very similar. You can see why these are all grouped together. Very similar to the psychopath, sociopath, and a narcissist. All would do this similar thing. The actual term itself, Machiavellianism, it was coined by two psychologists in the 70s, I said, and they were the ones that set up this assessment tool. It's called the Mach 4 test today, and this test is scored out of 100, and people that score above 60 are what we call Mach. They're the high Machs, and these are the people that would be classed as having, you know, full-blown Machiavellianism. It's not to say the people below 60 aren't as bad, and just like the other personality types, you can have traits. I, for instance, have had personal experience dealing with somebody who had narcissistic personality disorder, but that person also had sociopathic traits, so they had strong sociopathic traits. So they can be intermixed. You can have bits of both coming in together, and of course, very rare you can have a dark triad. Can be the whole lot. They have everything. They're extremely rare though, and would be extremely dangerous people. So treatment, yes, there is a treatment available. I mean, treatment's available for everybody, for no matter what. Unfortunately, you know, you've got to think of the personality, and you know, yes, an experienced therapist they must have experience of dealing with these types of people. So experience of dealing with these types of personality, you know, disorders and that. You really would have to have a very experienced therapist there. The problem with treatment, you have to have somebody who's willing to come into therapy first off, and you have to have somebody who's willing to be honest, at least with themselves, when you're treating somebody. And that's very hard, and you're certainly not, or unlikely, very, very unlikely, to have somebody that is a Machiavellian or any of the other personalities on the Dark Triad to come into therapy. It's usually people that have been the victims of these types of personalities that come in, and that's who ends up coming into therapy. You know, people who have been the victims, they've been bullied, you know, they've either been married to them, or you know, you've met them in the workplace, and then you know you've been abused and used by these people, and afterwards, it's only afterwards you realise what has happened to you. And very, very, very strongly, I would very strongly, you know, recommend that you actually go into therapy. You need it. You definitely need therapy. So some of the signs, and you'll see when I start talking about these signs that, you know, there are very common traits among all of these personalities, and that's why they're grouped together. So they're charming, very charming. You know, they can talk. They're capable of harming others. So please, you know, there's varying types of abuse, and most people think it's physical abuse. So I would recommend that if you don't understand that you can have varying forms of abuse from somebody, then you read my blogs on domestic violence, and there's a link out in this blog out to the one on domestic violence, because there are different types of abuse that you can suffer, and all highly detrimental to you as a person. So they're very charming, but as I said, capable of harming others, and can be lethal. Just like we think of psychopaths as the ones that are lethal, but they can all be lethal, all capable of murder. They can appear very highly confident. So they're, you know, they go into a room and they can, you know, talk to everybody and seem charming and friendly, very confident, very self-assured in themselves. But they also appear very aloof. So they, you know, you're not going to get to know the real them. You're never going to get to know the real them. And that takes a long time. They will exploit. They'll exploit situations and people to get what they want. Cheating. every kind of type of cheating, whether that's sexual, if you were in a relationship with them, they would cheat on you, or whether they would cheat in the job, they would cheat and lie and manipulate. They're master liars, master manipulators, master deceptors, they would calculate it out, they would calculate everything out. They really prioritize power and money, and they're getting their own needs met rather than relationships, and lacking in morals, values and principles. So they're constantly crossing boundaries. Like, boundaries, forget it, there's no boundaries with these people. They're also highly patient. They're like, think a cat hunting. It's the best one I can think of analogy, because they are that patient. They can just sit there waiting and then they pounce. So they are very calculating and very cunning and very patient if they need to be, to get what they want. They're very good at reading situations and people. And this is what makes them so good at what they do in terms of cheating and manipulating, and reading the situations. And as I said, they can seem very friendly and charming, but they are bullying as well. So they'll switch tactics like on a dime if they need to. So very abusive people. They will abuse you, as I said, in various degrees. It can be various degrees, and it probably won't be just like domestic violence. They're not going to walk up to you and hit you. It's going to be by incremental. They'll increase the crossing of the boundaries in increments. So therefore the abuse will ratchet up, and they'll see how far they can, they'll step it up, step it back, step it up and step it back, and they'll keep you like guessing, is this me? What's going on? What did I do wrong? And mostly when we come out of relationships with people like this, you will think it was your fault and you did something wrong. And in fact, it's not, it's actually them. They have just gotten into your head and really done a number on your head. They love businesses where, the rules can be ambiguous, or they can manipulate the rules. So, they can be quite good at that, but they will always be walking on top of somebody else, taking credit for other people's work, to get what they want and achieve in business. The main message here this morning really is you need to protect yourself. Just like with the other personalities on the Dark Triad, you really need to protect yourself. My one message to you would be, if you think you're in dealing with somebody like this, and why I link out to the domestic violence blog is, you need to think safety first, your own personal safety. You may need, and you probably will need, a safety plan in place in order to extradite yourself from, being in these people, around this person. You need to get away from them, in other words, in order to recover. And you need to do that with your own safety in mind, first and foremost. So a safety plan similar to one that I've discussed with domestic violence is very, very important there. Remember, they're very cunning, depending on the situation that you find yourself in. You really need to protect yourself. So in the other blogs, as I said, I do go into an awful lot of detail, and there is a huge amount of detail. There's actually step by step by step. I've gone into it. Some of them have sections in those blogs can run up to about 12 to 15 point steps that you need to take. Talking to solicitors, financial advisors, maybe legal advice. Somebody like MABS, even, you might have to go and deal with. That's the Money Advisory Bureau in Ireland. Very helpful group. They'll offer you financial advice for free. They also deal with creditors if you found yourself being financially abused by one of these people. But you're going to need a solicitor, maybe, even if you're not married to them or in an intimate relationship with somebody. If you've been working with somebody like this, you may have been the victim of bullying. You need legal advice, but you also need a good, strong therapist. You need somebody who will support you while you extradite yourself from the situation you found yourself in, but also then to help with your recovery, because more likely than not, you're going to be blaming yourself. And it can take an awful lot to survive somebody like this, mentally and physically. It's going to take a toll on you, so you definitely will need therapy there. So as I said, you know, there's a lot more detail in the blog. There's a lot more detail in the other blogs if you do want to check them out. If you've found yourself in those situations, I've left a link to the original blog in the description. And if you need help, let me know. I'm here, just reach out. There's a link where you can make an appointment with me, or you know, I have a great support group for women, mums, that you can also join if you want to do some self-care and things like that. So do come along and join me. So I'm going to leave it there. Good morning, Deirdre, as always. Just going to check the comments. It is a lovely dry day, thank God. And I'm going to leave it there. And thank you as always for watching, everybody who watches live and everybody who watches in replay. And I will talk to you again next Saturday morning. So I'll see you then.